Hello, welcome, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining this very special Instagram Live where we have the pleasure of chatting today with Marie Prince, who is a consultant clinical psychologist at TFP Fertility UK. And this is an absolute must to watch because she will be giving amazing advice and a toolkit for coping with but embracing the holiday season whilst you're trying to conceive. We know what a challenging time it is, so her wisdom and expertise are second to none, and she has some very insightful ways to navigate tricky conversations and to keep a positive and happy mindset whilst you're perhaps struggling this holiday season. So we will invite her in now, and we look. We are just inviting Marie into our live and then we can get started. Hello, Marie.
Hi, Elise, how are you?
Okay, thank you. How are you?
Really good. I'm so pleased that the tech worked.
It has worked. It has worked. And as always, it's absolutely lovely to see you. So thank you for joining me on this December evening.
Great to be here. I'm delighted. Looking forward to it.
So I was just saying to those who are joining, this is a really important live tonight because as we know, when you're trying to conceive, the holiday season can be particularly challenging. And I know that you have wonderful tips for really embracing that time to enjoy festivities. So first of all, if you could please introduce yourself and your role at TFP Fertility UK, then we can start to talk about the topic today.
Absolutely. So I am Dr. Marie Prince, also known as the fertility psychologist. So that is my area of expertise, and I have been working at TFP Fertility UK for a good 7 or 8 years. And I'm based up at their clinic in Glasgow. So I'm hoping to see some of my local Glasgow folk on here this evening.
Great, great. So I'd really like to understand, or for you to tell us a little bit about what you experience with the patients that you support at TFP Fertility UK, the challenges during the holiday season, as we're going up to Christmas, for example. Why can it be particularly challenging at this time of year when you're trying to conceive?
Traditionally, Christmas was literally the celebration of the birth of a baby. And the way we've translated that in modern times is Christmas is so centered around children and families. If you are doing activities that aren't family centered, then they're probably centered around alcohol and delicious but very indulgent food, which is also tricky if you're trying to conceive. There's also the time. You know, we set our resolutions in the new year, don't we? We think this is it. This will be the year that I become a parent. This will be the year it happens. So another Christmas rolling by where maybe that hasn't happened or it's been really challenging over the year. It really highlights to people that progression of time. And that can feel so tricky. And then there's often that pressure, isn't there? Like, oh, Christmas, it's full of joy and it's full of magic and it's full of excitement. Well, do you know what? It's not always. So we know that Christmas is such a hard time for people. And one of the things I'd really like to get across today is it's not hard because you're doing anything wrong. It's not hard because you're not coping well. It's hard because it can be a really triggering time of year for people.
Absolutely. And I know we're going to talk in a minute about some techniques and ways to really embrace and enjoy this period when things can seem challenging. And also, social media can be difficult, can't it? When you're seeing reels of people with babies or Elf on the Shelf or whatever it might be, again, as you said, can be a reminder of what you were hoping for in a year that's just gone and been.
Yeah, and I don't want to vilify social media. It's so useful, but I would encourage everyone to really curate their social media. So a conversation I sometimes have with people is actually around why don't you have separate accounts, one of which you never type the word fertility, you never type the word baby or IVF into the algorithm. and have an account that is literally for fun stuff. It's for crafts or funny videos of cats falling over or whatever, so that you can still get some of the joy and fun from social media without some of the more triggering stuff.
Yeah.
The other bit to remember is that how much of what we see on social media is completely real.
Good point. Very, very good point.
So pinch of salt when we're viewing that, and just be cautious, be aware of, if you are engaging with social media and all the benefits that that can really bring you, just be really conscious of how is that making me feel, and when it's not feeling good, stop.
Absolutely. And it's okay to put yourself first, isn't it? And do what feels best for you in that moment.
Yeah, and I wonder if this is going to be the theme of our conversation today, Eloise. We live in a society where people aren't great at always putting their own needs first. One of the questions I often say to people in clinic is, what do you need right now? So coming up to Christmas, what are your needs? What are your preferences? What do you desire? And the answer I usually get is, I have no idea.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a pressure that people just kind of go along with the usual traditions. They go along with what they've always done with their friends, with their family. And actually, I would encourage people to really stop and really think about what's right for you. And I think we're going to touch on that loads this afternoon.
So, what advice would you give to people who want to spend time with loved ones, but might be fearful about comments or what might come up or triggers?
Yeah. Well, I think you just used a really interesting phrase, loved ones. If you are going to be surrounded by people that you feel really genuinely connected to, that will usually be a positive state of affairs to be in. However, there's so much obligation at Christmas, isn't there? You have to go and visit that person because we always have, and we see that group of friends that we've seen since school because we always do. Actually, I wonder whether it's really important that everybody focuses on surrounding themselves with people who really do nourish them, those relationships that feel true and authentic and positive. So if you are with these people that you trust and love and they trust and love you, then I would really encourage you to go into these situations being clear about what you need, as I've already said, but then telling people, go and tell people, this is how I'm doing today. This is how I'm feeling. It's okay to ask me about the fertility journey today, or opposite. Do you know what? Let's keep it off the agenda today.
Mm-hmm.
Go and tell people what you need. And that can be really tricky if you're with people who maybe you don't feel completely comfortable with. I mean, hopefully people aren't spending Christmas with people who, where the relationships are incredibly difficult, but we know that that does happen. So again, this comes back to really thinking through carefully, who are those people in your support team? Who are your cheerleaders? Who are the people that actually you can go and enjoy yourself with? You can relax. You don't have to put on any sort of facade. And people who you might feel comfortable saying, do you know what, I need a break right now. I'm just going to go and take some time out. So surround yourself with the right people. If you're surrounded with people where relationships are a bit trickier, think carefully for yourself. How do you protect yourself? How do you make that as comfortable as possible for you?
So, if you're invited to parties or things that you just don't feel like going to, or you do feel like going to, what would you suggest there? Do you see patients that you're speaking to with these kinds of dilemmas?
Oh, all the time. And there's two sides to this coin. So one is, guys, if you don't want to go, don't go. And I often say to people, why would you put yourself through that? If they're walking into a situation and they know they're going to be there with all their friends' kids, and that just feels so difficult for them, go do something that makes you feel good. But there is a fine line between, no, I'm asserting my preferences and choices, and that's super important. There's a fine line between that and actually just avoiding everything and avoiding everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Because people can often feel quite, well, very isolated on their fertility journey. Unfortunately, some people really feel that sense of almost shame and stigma around it, and they don't want to see people. Um, and sometimes it's so easy to get into a habit of focusing on all the difficult parts
Mm-hmm.
and not remembering that actually, so often I've thought, oh God, I really don't want to go to whatever it is. And then actually I've gone and I've actually had quite a nice time. So yes, you always. And be really mindful of when you might be avoiding a situation purely because we're catastrophizing. We're looking at the worst case scenario and we're not stepping back to see what else could happen. Maybe that actually could be a really nice party. I might catch up with people, I might meet new people. So assert your boundaries and be aware of your own tendencies when it comes to avoiding situations and why that might be.
Love that. Such good advice. And also, would you say that it's fine? Well, we talked about finding your people. So, would you encourage people to talk about what they're going through? Or do you feel that there are some people who want to keep things to themselves and keep it private, and other people, it's a release to be able to talk about what's going on?
Yeah, it's both and. So you're talking to a psychologist. So clearly, I believe in talking and the power of that. However, there are clearly two camps of people. There are the folk that want to just, heart on sleeve, tell everyone everything. And then there are people, the opposite end of that spectrum, who don't want to tell anyone anything. Now, it's entirely up to you what feels the most comfortable way for you to be. But I often see people who get really annoyed that somebody didn't ask them how they were, or didn't acknowledge that they might have been struggling, or asked a really clumsy, insensitive question. But that person didn't know that you were going through a fertility journey. That person didn't know the kind of year that you'd had and how rough it had been. And that really contributes to that feeling of isolation that people have. So I'm often, and it sounds a bit harsh, but I'm saying, well, come on, you've got to give people a bit of grace. If you don't tell them what's going on, you can't expect them to handle that sensitively. So I would say, come on, let's put the ball back in our court. Let's take control of that and think clearly, what is okay for me to share, what feels comfortable, and what is completely off the table. And then you can take control of that situation. You can share what you do and what you don't want. And really thinking about, who are the people that I want to ask me how I'm going?
Mhm.
Who are the people that I want to be able to share with, actually, this is the reality? And who are the people that I just want to giggle with? Who are the people that actually this won't be a topic of conversation and we'll just chat utter nonsense all night and have a real laugh? We need all those people in our support network.
Absolutely, completely agree. And with patients that you speak to at TFP Fertility UK, do you find that people relish community of others who are going through similar things, to be able to share those feelings so you don't feel isolated and alone, like you're the only one feeling this, especially at this time of year?
Absolutely. It still astounds me, the number of people that say, I don't know anyone who's been through this. Like, my friends don't understand, my family don't understand. And I'm always encouraging people, and often it is on social media, but go and find your community, go and find your network, go and join, the ribbon box, get on the TFP Fertility UK Facebook groups and Instagrams,
Absolutely.
go and find your tribe. It's much easier to talk to someone who you don't know
Mhm.
because you're not invested in that relationship. So, they're not, when they're talking to me, then they don't have to worry about what I've got going on in my life. They don't have to worry about upsetting me in the way that, they're like, well, I don't want to tell my mum that because she'll be devastated for me too. You're not managing the feelings of the other person if it's an online community. Um, Absolutely get out there, find your tribe, find your place where people really get it and you have that shared experience. And I think that contributes to our resiliency. So we don't want to be going into our family and friends and telling them what's going on. We boost our resiliency, we get that off our chest, we emotionally process some of what's going on, and then we can go and focus on, right, okay, let's do the Christmas thing today, or whatever it is, at the, at the social event.
Absolutely. This is such sound advice. If anyone wants to ask Marie any questions as we're going through, please, please do. This is what we're here for today. Can you tell us a little bit more about the emotional support that's offered at TFP Fertility UK? You just mentioned Facebook group, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. So primarily, all staff are trained to understand how difficult this journey can be and how worthwhile and rewarding it is too. So I feel really confident that you walk into any clinic and get a warm and really person-centered approach. Every clinic has access to fertility counsellors and psychologists, every single clinic you go to. I'm always astounded the number of people that don't use that service. So you have access to specialised fertility counsellors and psychologists at every TFP clinic. Please go and use it. A lot of people come to me and say, I don't really know why I'm here. Well, we never we never sit in silence. There's always something to focus on. So please use your supports. Please use the Facebook groups, the Instagram pages where you can connect with other people. I feel really passionate that everybody should have access to professional support when they're on a fertility journey. We know it can be hugely stressful. We know a huge number of people struggle with their mental health as they're trying to conceive. So please use the supports that are available to you through TFP UK.
Yeah, absolutely. And for anyone who is interested in finding out more, please do head to our link in bio to have a personalised chat and speak with the team who are there ready to help and support, especially now. I would suggest people doing that at this time of year. Tricky questions. So
Mm-hmm.
we know from polls we've done with the community and conversations we've had with our followers and our community that tricky questions can come up that can be triggering during this time of year, such as when you're going to have a baby, or light-hearted jokes, if you like, as you said, probably from people who may not know what you're going through, and so they don't realize the impact that comment has had on you. How do you navigate those kinds of tricky questions, especially in public?
Yeah, I think there's something really important about trying to prepare for that. It maybe sounds a bit overly negative of me to say, but almost expecting those kinds of questions to come up. You'll know your friends and family, or it's such a common thing. I imagine I've done it at times, you've asked like, oh, do you have children? And you haven't thought about how painful that question might be for someone. So I would encourage you all to think about, what do I want to share? So there's a technique that I really like, and I tell all my clients about it, called the broken record technique. So if you're not that person that's like, yeah, I'm going to tell people everything, if it just feels too painful to do that, practice your line. Practice the thing that you want to say to people. So the person that's like, oh, so when are you having a baby? I don't know. Doesn't matter what the line is, but use it, stick to it, and don't deviate. Because people will be like, oh, well, you must have thought about it. The last follow-up questions, the last more. Stick to your one line. Stick to the one thing that you want to say. I don't want to talk about that. Or, it's off the table. Or, oh, you don't want to know, let's move on. But if you repeat the same thing 2 or 3 times, people really quickly get the message.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
they're not giving me any more information in it. I may as well move on. So that's a specific technique that I like. I also think it's worth remembering that the majority of the time people are not asking those questions to intentionally be cruel.
Yes.
And it's not the question, and it's not the person asking the question that we might be having a real strong emotional reaction to. It's really thinking about, well, it's the situation that I'm finding myself in. And the reason I say that is because it's very easy in those moments to feel so emotional, so frustrated, so angry. And it's tempting to throw that at the other person. And actually, that's not the root of what's going on. So if you can do a little bit of groundwork before you go into those situations, so you don't feel like that rabbit in the headlights, because that then makes us feel more anxious and more uncomfortable. Do the groundwork. Think about what am I willing to say? What's the line I want to use? And stick to that. Also, don't be afraid to leave a conversation. Try not to worry so much about, well, I don't want to appear rude, or you can exit a conversation. And again, have your line. I just need to go and check something. I just need to go and speak to so and so. And exit stage left if you need to.
Mhm.
This is about really thinking about what is right for you, and knowing that you have control over that and you can make choices to support yourself and prioritize you over the other person.
Such great advice. Earlier this year, I had a chemical pregnancy, and at the exact same time, my sister had a baby, which is obviously amazing, but it meant that our family WhatsApp group was flooded with newborn pictures. And I found that quite difficult at the time. So I just had to say, guys, I'm just going to remove myself temporarily, and then I will be back in my own time. And they respected that. Have you heard of people in those situations with messaging and things like that?
Absolutely. I mean, full respect to you, Eloise, because that's something I would encourage people to do. Tell people that this is too difficult a space for you to be in right now. Tell people that you just need to remove yourself for a while you heal, and you'll be back. What often happens is people just leave the WhatsApp group. People just stop responding to the messages, and it can really create conflict in relationships. That is not what the person wanted, but actually it's about recognizing that that space is just too painful for me to be in. And if you keep exposing yourself to that, you're adding suffering, you're adding harm to a situation that is already tricky for you. It's already painful. So it's managing those boundaries. And, we're doing it warmly and kindly and lovingly, but putting ourselves at the center of what we need. You know, if you've got, a group of friends and it's, every morning the elf on the shelf type chat, maybe you don't need to wake up to that every day. Um, and I would encourage you to then just speak your truth. This is, I love you all dearly. However, this is really difficult for me. Um, it might even be that you just tell a couple of people that you're particularly close with. You might ask them to pass the message on
Hmm.
when you're out of the group. Use the support, use the people around you. What I often find is that it makes people feel so vulnerable to say, this is what I really want, and it's not happening. People blame themselves. People feel very critical. We don't like feeling vulnerable in front of other people. But what I see time and time again, when people are brave, when people do say, I had that conversation with my friends, I told my family what I needed, they come back and say, oh, it went far better than I expected. People then said,
That's
okay, how can
encouraging.
we help? You
Hmm.
know?
That's really good to hear. Be lovely to hear from those who are watching of people's experiences. I think that the advice that you're giving is just absolutely perfect for so many people where it is a struggle at the moment, and we want to be embracing this time that everyone knows and loves as a festive period. I think one of the other comments, and I know we're going to talk about this now, is kind of eating and drinking over the festive period. As you said, Christmas is all about that, for a lot of people, and there's so much. Well, especially if you're going to parties or Christmas parties or whatever it might be, that's sort of the center focus of it, of a gathering. And I remember one of those tricky questions being, "Why aren't you drinking? Are you pregnant?" Which again can be triggering in itself. So, what would be your advice there?
Yeah, so I have to say I'm not a dietitian, so I'm not going to give, specific advice around food. But again, for me, this comes back to choice and boundaries. So so you can do whatever you want, right? And that's really, really important. If you feel it's really key to you to eat and drink in a certain way, and you want to continue that over the festive period, and you don't want to be indulging in anything, then don't do it.
Hmm.
And to help you with that, I would encourage you to really connect to the reasons why you want to eat and drink in the way that you choose. And that it's probably because you're wanting to feel fit and healthy and in control to give you the best chance of trying to conceive, you know. At the same time, I would encourage you maybe to have a little bit of flexibility. So I am definitely an everything in moderation type person. Um, I think if it feels okay for you, maybe you can relax a little bit, you know, maybe you can allow yourself to eat some foods that you wouldn't typically eat, because what does that give you in terms of a sense of relaxation and a sense of satisfaction, and that connection with family, you know, that sharing a meal at Christmas with people who you love is a really key part of it for so many of us.
Yeah.
So on one hand, you do you. So don't be feeling like you have to stick to other people's agenda when it comes to what you eat and when you eat and what you drink. At the same time, I would probably encourage just a little bit of flexibility around that too. Um,
And not to
you
beat
know,
yourself up if you have a drink
oh,
or eat something that you weren't eating
absolutely.
before.
And isn't that a message for all of us all the time?
Yes.
To drop the self-criticism and dial up the self-compassion and dial up the self-love. You know, if we think about, if we move away from fertility treatments, when people do want to control what they eat and drink, and I understand the rationale for that, if we contrast that with people who may have just managed to fall pregnant very easily, were they managing every morsel that went into their mouth? Were they definitely not drinking any alcohol at all for the full 3 months before they conceived? Probably not. So for me, as a psychologist and not a dietitian, the controlling our eating and drinking is more about trying to impose a sense of control over a fertility journey that we really don't have a lot of control over. So allowing yourself to think about what would feel good in my body today, you know, what would actually feel like it would make today a festive day, you know, what would make it enjoyable. And I'm absolutely not endorsing that we all go crazy on the you know, the Baileys and the mince pies. However, there is absolutely no scientific research that tells you that eating some mince pies is going to affect your ability to conceive.
Mhm.
I know I'm being a little bit tongue in cheek there, but I do encourage some flexibility and lots of self-compassion.
Love that. Absolutely love that. What do you think around journaling?
Oh, love journaling. So just a couple of weeks ago, a new study came out. The author is Penny Baker, 2023. Now, I'm an advocate of journaling for a couple of reasons. I think it's a really good way of emotionally processing what's going on for you. I think it's a really good way of getting it out of your mind and out of your body on the page. The actual act of writing keeps your frontal lobes engaged. It keeps that bit of your brain in on the page that allows you to really take perspective. So as you're journaling, you can be thinking, no, get rid of that. Actually, that doesn't matter. And you can get really clear about, these are the key points for me that I'm trying to manage right now. So this Pennebaker study that was released a few weeks ago now, we now have really decent quality scientific evidence that journaling 15 minutes per week, once a week for 15 minutes, journaling on the topic that feels very difficult for you. So when I say journaling, I should probably explain, I just put your pen on the page and let it go. Right? You don't need to read it back. You don't need to spell things properly. You don't need to write neatly. You can literally rip it up after you finish. Pen on page and let it flow. Write about the thing that is causing you stress and worry at this time. 15 minutes a week. It reduced people's self-reported levels of stress, it improved sleep, it improved overall well-being. So although we've always known, well, I've always known that journaling is beneficial, we now have really good quality evidence that says you only need to do it once a week for 15 minutes. So if you head over to my Instagram, fertility.psychologist, in the link in the bio, you go to my Think If It school, there are 3 fertility prompts uploaded there. Go and use them, sit, or just put pen on paper and let it flow. 15 minutes, that's all. Really valuable.
Someone has just said they tried to start journaling and then stopped, and they now find it difficult to get back into. Any hints on how to get back into it?
Think how often we have started the gym and stopped. I've started a really good meditation practice, then stopped. I've started going for a walk every morning and then I've stopped. I just think that's completely normal and it doesn't matter. If you're struggling to get back into it, I'd maybe ask you to journal on that. What's the block?
Yeah, yeah,
Sit
yeah,
and
I love that.
write.
Yeah, yeah.
Sit and write. Why don't I want to do this? And then before you know it, you'll be doing it. I think something that we don't often do is slow down. Journaling enables us to do that. You know, we have to stop. We have to sit still for 15 minutes and focus on how we're feeling. Okay. So I think to put the pen and page on journal on why you don't want to journal could be a really nice way of getting back into it.
Mhm.
Um, it can be really difficult to focus on what feels really tough. So, you know, sometimes that is the block, um, you know, to us getting back into it, basically. Um,
And there'll be
the other
some
bit
days
is
when you don't feel like writing any, and other days when you probably feel like writing more.
absolutely a lot of people, you know, put that pressure on like I have to do this every morning, or you know, I have to do the 10 things I'm grateful for every night, you know, and that's great. If that feels good and you can do that, do it. I often journal just very briefly on a Monday morning when I'm like, oh, I've got to get back into my work. And it really helps me tune into gratitude. And it gets me out of the mindset of like, oh God, you know, I have to go back to work. And it really helps me tune into, aren't I lucky to go into a job that I want to be doing? You know,
Mhm.
it helps shift the focus to a place of appreciation and gratitude. So there is no pressure. You do not have to do this every day. Start small. Start by literally scribbling one thing on a post-it note and work your way up. You don't have to dive into the like daily practice or the full 15 minutes. Start small, build up.
Love that. Thank you so much, Marie. Now, looking ahead to the new year, tips for keeping positive, because everyone, well, not everyone, but most people will look at New Year's and think of resolutions and what do I need to, or what do I want to achieve this year. What do you think about the new year?
Well, I think the figure is something ridiculous, like 98% of us have lost our New Year's resolutions by the
Yes,
3rd of January.
I'm definitely guilty of that. Yeah.
It's dark, it's winter, it's a time of hibernation and maybe a bit more, you know, quiet time and downtime after Christmas. I'm not a fan of resolutions because I think the way a lot of us interpret them is as pressure,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know, more standards. And then if we set things that, you know, are pretty tricky to achieve, then we enhance that sense of failure. So what I always encourage people to do, regardless of the time of year, is really develop your own toolkit. So again, if you go to my Thinkific school, there's a free template that you can just download and use, and I send this to all my clients. So really good template, mind, body, soul. I have a completed template there that is completed with the scientifically backed strategies around sleep, around access to daylight, around nourishing your body, moving your body, decent nutrition, how we manage stress using things like journaling, gratitude practice, meditation, yoga, all these things that have a really good evidence base to show that they will help you manage stress. Then there's a blank template for you to start building your own toolkit. So this isn't something, you know, I have to do all these things every day, and if I don't, I feel like I failed. This is about really getting clear. What do you want? What do you need? We're going into a new year. For some, it will bring a sense of hope and clean slate, and that's great. And for some people, it will feel like, oh, here we go again. A different year, same difficulties, you know? So get clear around what are the things that help you, you know? And there's often a couple of common things. People are like, oh, well, I know I feel better if I go for a walk. Right, okay, well let's use that. But what else? I'm a big fan of small, everyday acts of mindfulness. So if you are in the shower, your head could be easily thinking about, I've got to do this and I've got to do that, make that phone call, blah, blah, blah. Or you could take 3 deep breaths and focus on nothing other than your fingers on your scalp or the smell of your shampoo. That is not going to make your IVF journey any easier, but what it is going to do is turn your attention towards something that feels nice, that
Mm-hmm.
feels nourishing for 10 seconds versus worrying about the 100 things that we could be worrying about. So get clear. What do you want? What helps you cope? Because if you're on a fertility journey, it's stressful and we know that. So I would say sack the resolutions, but just get clear about what is it that helps me? What are the things that I need that nourish my soul, that really improve your mood, that you reduce your anxiety and boost your resilience to cope with whatever's coming in 2024.
Love that. Thank you. I wish that I had been able to lean on you for your expertise throughout my fertility struggles. And anyone who's watching, I am sure, will agree that it has been such an insightful live. So thank you so much. And I really do encourage people to head to our link in bio and tap it and reach out to the team at TFP Fertility UK for 2024 to help and guide you with personalised and supportive holistic fertility care, because this psychological support is so important whatever stage of your journey you're at. Marie, is there anything else that you would like to mention or sort of end our session with?
Main theme: prioritize yourself. It's so important. Today, I want you to all ask yourself, what could I do in the next 30 minutes that is for me and only me? Do that and look after yourselves.
Love it. Thank you so much. Thank you also to everyone who has joined today or those who are watching back. And we look forward to speaking again in the new year.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, Mary. Bye-bye. Bye.